It's time for another Dice Tower review with Zee Garcia.
Hey folks, today we are taking a look at a small card game called Hocus. And Hocus here is, at its most basic, a poker variant. In it, you are going to be building pools of cards. You are going to be setting cards aside that only work for you, and then basically having a poker showdown. It's sort of like playing multiple hands of poker at once, and then with some special powers and spells sprinkled on top of that. Let me show you how the game works, and then I'll tell you if I think this is a good one. Here we go. The objective of the game is to have the most points when someone crosses 25 points, which is the end game trigger. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to be given one of these basic spell cards. They are going to be given another set of 3 cards, of which there are several. These you can see here, as well as several others. And you are also given 2 cards here, which make up a way for you to keep track of your score by sliding one card on top of the other and denoting how many points you have. So, you know, something like this would be 5 points, and then eventually if you flip this over, then that would be, say, 17 points. And so that's what you're doing with those. And then you got the deck of cards ready to play. You are going to shuffle the deck, and you are going to deal each player a certain number of cards here, depending on the number of players. So say 4 players, everybody gets 9. And we also would have removed a few cards from the deck, 2 jokers that they really include just in case you want to throw them in there, make your own variant up, whatever you want, but you are supposed to remove them. And then for 4 players, we would have removed the zeros, and we would have removed the 14s. And so 1 through 13 in 4 suits, shuffle this up and give everybody 9, as I said. And then you are ready to begin. You're going to play over multiple rounds until the game is over. On your turn, you are going to do one of several things, which is basically triggering a spell. They're all a spell. So you can do one of your basic spells. You can do the first one there is build the community. Build a community. And so let's say what I have is this, and I don't have these, I don't have this, and I just have all of that. Okay, and these 3 spells, which are my advanced spells and my common ones. So first thing, build community, is quite simply take a card from my hand and put it face up on the table to start a community. Okay, there will be for 4 players, there will be 2 communities that get built up. All right, so I'll start one, let's say, and let's say the next player decides to play to a community as well. That's the spell they do. Well, they could play to the same community, and each one will be able to hold 4 cards, or they could start the other community. The next option you have is you can build a pocket for yourself, and what that means is quite simply you're going to take your cards, you're going to take 1 or 2 cards, 1 or 2 cards, and you are going to put them in front of you in a pocket. You can build up to 2 pockets throughout the game, and these are cards that you are going to be using to fight for these with these communities for the pot, which is your last basic spell. You can build a pot, and quite simply that means take a card, add it to one of these community lines in order to assign point values to that community. So whoever wins this community is going to score the points that are in that pot. Okay. The other 3 options you have there are, well, individual to you, but there'll be things like this one, for example. So draw 2 cards, place one of them in a community, or one of your pockets. So they're advanced spells that sort of take these options and tweak them and power them up and mix them up, things like that. The game round is going to be over when all the communities have 4 cards, and at that point, then we are going to, each player gets 1 more play, and the round is over. And then we are going to actually compare poker hands, basically, which are on the back of the basic spells here. You have a breakdown of all the available poker rankings, which is pretty much standard poker. And you are going to, with your pocket cards, you are going to pick a set of pocket cards and add them to a line, whatever line we happen to be fighting over. So someone will say, the star player will say, okay, let's do this one first. Everybody picks a pocket, assuming they want to, and they add it onto that line, and you compare the best poker hand. So in this case, let's say I have, let's pick something good here. Let's find, that's a 13. So let's say this is what we had, and let's say this was my pocket. I would flip these over and say, well, there's a 13 here in the community, and my pocket was 2 13s, so I got triples. That's basically what I have. 3 of a kind. 3 13s. And we would see someone has maybe a full house. And then, oh, okay, they won. So they would then flip this over, and they would score all the points that are in that pot. The cards themselves, besides having a rank up here, have a point value right below that. And this one says 2, 2, and 4. So that player would score 8 victory points on their little scorecard here. And then we can wipe these away and do the other one. And again, whoever wins would flip these over and score those. There is also one suit of cards, these owls, that give you special powers if you win them in the pot. Quite simply, you would score the regular points as always. So let's say this was in the pot, you would score your 5 victory points as it says there on the 13, but then you would keep this card on the table, and they allow you some sort of power you can play on top of your normal 1 spell per turn. You do it before or after a spell, and they do typically smaller things, like this one for instance says, use all 3 basic spells. If this owl is played, you cannot use any other spells this turn. Very powerful one. If you use this one, you cannot use any others. But that is pretty powerful, that one. So that's the idea. We would shuffle up, we would play again until someone crosses 25. And at that point, whoever has the most points is the winner. You can also play this game, as it says in the rule books, as classic Hocus, which is quite simply without any special cards. So we would just take all of these out of the game, and we would only play with the basic spells here. That makes for a game that's less chaotic. It has a little bit more control. You can time things a little bit more carefully. But really, it's up to you. You can choose to do one, you can choose to do the other. You can even, and this is not mentioned in the rule book, but I did read it online, you could play where each player is given only some of their spell cards. And, so they all have a number on the bottom, a 1, a 2, and a 3. You could say, okay, everybody's just going to get their 3 basic spells and the 1, let's say. The 1 is typical. I think what they said was that the 1 was weaker than the 2, or perhaps less chaotic, and the 2 less than the 3. So if you want a game that's a little bit less crazy, just play with the 1, maybe the 1 and the 2. Lots of different ways to customize how you tackle the whole thing, but that's basically Hocus. The first thing that really grabbed me about this game is the look of the whole thing. The artwork is very well done. It's just a good-looking game. And yes, ultimately, there is not that much artwork in the game because every card in each suit is the same image. So there's not that much artwork. But it all does look good. And while you're waiting for your turn, you have something nice to look at. And the game is eye-catching on the table. The gameplay itself is interesting. I find it engaging. Especially, I think, for folks who enjoy poker, this is going to be something they're going to find interesting. People that don't know how to play poker, you're going to have to teach them how to play. It's almost like you have to teach them how to play poker first and then play this game. But, that's something you could certainly do. I like the ability that the game gives you to really customize how you play is ultimately my favorite thing about this little card game. You can play with all the basic spells, all the advanced spells. You could throw the jokers in there if you really wanted to. You can make the game more chaotic, have more powers happening. You can play Classic, where you remove all of that, just give yourself the basic spells, no jokers, none of that. A much more basic experience, much more controlled experience. And it really, I do like that whole range of gameplay. Sometimes I want to play something that's a little less basic, you know, a little more chaotic, and so I'll throw everything in there. But the classic style works really well, and it's a little more thinky, I think. I do have one complaint about the game, and that is that I wish the rule book was a little bit more thorough. I think this rule book is kind of a letdown. I found it to be enough to get playing, but there's no reason why they couldn't have given me a little bit more detail in here. There's a few things I wasn't really able to find, like it's possible I missed it, but there's not a lot of square footage to this thing, but I couldn't find what happens when, for example, if there's a tie for the, for the pot, then it says to split the points. That's fine, but what happens to the owls? You know, normally the person who wins gets the owls. I assumed no one gets them, but I'm not sure. And I also do wish they would have included in the rule book a bit more thorough of an explanation of all of those special spells, because they don't go into it at all here. So if you read one of the cards and you don't quite understand how it's supposed to work, I wish there was a little bit more clarification in the rulebook itself. So unfortunately, a bit let down by this rulebook. It's a little brief, and a little expansion upon it, I think, would have gone a long way. So I like it. I think it's a cool little card game. It's you know, I have a hard time sometimes with these card games that say, oh, we've reinvented Rummy, we've revolutionized poker, and it's typically not the case. And I still think this is not the case with Hocus. You know, it's a nice sidestep from poker, but this is not, you know, the second coming of poker or anything like that. But still, I do recommend it. I think they did enough in the game. They've taken the time and the care to make this a good evolution of that, and it shows, I think. So, thumbs up from me. Hocus, nice little card game, especially if you are a poker fan, so go check it out.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.